The people were cheering for Rain when he entered Ashling city. They were impressed by how he managed to enter the city in only 3 days, without casualties. Lady Selena started begging the protagonist to tell her how he broke the wall. He knew that she wouldn't stop until he gave her an explanation. He answered that it was based on the principle of thermal expansion and contraction in physics. But this was something she knew nothing about. Rain explained that if you heat something up, it will expand, and if you cool something, it will shrink. But they needed to deal with Eldrick now, so he would explain more later. Moments later, at the place where the wall had crumbled, people from under the debris were asking for Rain's help. He asked if they were trying to trick him with this play of theirs. One of the lords who aided Eldrick answered that no, never. He had actually been tricked himself by Eldrick into revolting against Master Rain. Another one of the lords added that they had tried to capture the former city lord, but he was too cunning. The protagonist stated that he had already offered them 2 opportunities to join him, but they refused. One of the traitors declared that he would give up all his properties to prove his loyalty. But Rain answered that he could just kill him and get the properties anyway. The traitor stated that this was tyranny. No one would be loyal to him with such actions. The young master replied that people are only loyal to their own interests, and they should have known this after living for so long. He then ordered the soldiers to arrest the 2 traitors. In another part of the city, Eldrick was screaming that Rain broke through the wall like it was nothing. The mysterious man couldn't believe what he was hearing. The wall was on fire, and then it was extinguished, and it just collapsed, said the traitor. The masked man told him to stop talking nonsense and get his story straight, because there was no way such a simple method to collapse a wall existed. There is simply no way. Some powerful forbidden magic must have been involved. Eldrick said that either way, they had to run before Rain showed up with the army. The mysterious man grabbed a scroll. But at the same time, Rain appeared right behind them and asked where the 2 of them were planning to go so fast. The former city lord, surprised, asked how he got there so quickly. The protagonist answered that once he abandoned the wall, his job became easy. The traitor's soldiers surrendered, and he was able to take the city. He then asked the masked man if he was behind the rebellion and if the mask hid his ugliness. But the man replied that Rain would lose his snarkiness when the army of the Orvis Empire knocked on his door. He even destroyed the wall of the city and made it easier for the enemy army to walk right in. The masked man then opened the scroll, and Rain called for Leah to stop him. A knife was thrown toward the mysterious man, and his mask was completely destroyed. Leah had failed to kill the enemy, only uncovering the face of the mysterious man. The now unmasked man recognized Leah, as he had seen her before. He then immediately activated the scroll, and after stating that this was not over and that he would have his revenge, teleported away, leaving Rain and Leah unable to do anything. The maid apologized for failing to stop them, but Rain wasn't too bothered. He only wished to have known the identity of the masked man. Leah stated that she actually recognized him, surprising her master. She said that he was Ravenlock Eldrin, a former subordinate of the Grand Duke, who later defected to Grand Duke Soren. Recognizing the name Eldrin, Rain asked if he had anything to do with the Adrian he had executed some time ago. She answered that they were related. He used to be the head of the Eldrin family, but because he didn't agree with the Grand Duke's ideas, he betrayed them, left the family, and joined the enemy empire. Lady Selena showed up and said that the situation was under control now, but asked what they would do about the Orvis Empire's army. Even if all their mages concentrated on repairing the city wall, it might be too late. Rain reassured her that he would find a solution for the situation. Sometime later, Rain decided to address the citizens about the recent events. Selena thought that the young master would try to calm everyone down, but what could he say to prevent panic? The protagonist started by asking if he could be heard by everyone, then declared that there was something he needed to tell them. The army of the Orvis Empire was marching toward them and would be there in a few days. This piece of information made the people panic. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. Selena also panicked, asking what he was doing and why he was trying to scare them. The people were confused about why the enemy empire was attacking now. The war had ended last spring. Many of them were considering running away, even though Master Rain had provided them with a good life. Lady Selina told the young lord that he shouldn't tell his citizens things like this, and he asked why. She answered that people would only panic and demand the army protect them. Rain told her she was misunderstanding his intentions. On the battlefield, only the commander needs to be calm, the soldiers need to be riled up. Lady Selina was even more confused by the young master's behavior. Rain took out a letter and told everyone it was from the Orvis Empire, calling the people of Ashling City cowards who would abandon their homes and run away. Every citizen of Ashling became angry upon hearing that statement. Rain continued, saying that the Orvis Empire doesn't know the people of Ashling, they aren't cowards or fools. The citizens were riling up, shouting that they would protect their homes and wouldn't lose against the puny army of the Orvis Empire. The protagonist was glad to see his people show courage and swore to defeat the enemy's army. The citizens started shouting in support of the young lord. After night had fallen, at the manor of the city lord, Rain was still busy going through documents and planning for the clash with the enemy army. Leah entered and offered him a cup of tea, asking him to rest for the night. But Rain answered that there was no time to rest. If he didn't find a solution, the enemies would take the city. That made her ask why he had so much confidence in front of the people. He answered that he needed to stabilize the situation in the city and make sure the people wouldn't panic. Leah offered to take him out of the city before his life was in danger. He told her that there was still hope, but he had taken precautions by having the wizards evacuate the children and elderly. Then he remembered that he needed to find out more about the contents of a certain book. It might be the solution to their problem. He asked her if she knew what the dark green divine oil mentioned in the book was. Leah answered that she had heard it burned quite well and that witches tended to use it in rituals. Rain thought about petroleum, which has different colors depending on its contents. If Leah said it was an oil that could burn, then it might be what he was looking for. He immediately asked Leah to take him to the warehouse where the account book specified it was stored. A bit later, the guards were ordered to open the gates of the warehouse. Inside, Rain ordered the soldiers to find the item called dark green divine oil. But he also warned them not to use an open flame around it, and that it should be stored in a barrel. Then, seeing all the gold inside, Rain was sure that Eldrick had been embezzling money for a long time. Once they passed the current crisis, this money could be used to develop the city's industry, maybe even build a steam engine. The soldiers announced that they had found what he was looking for, and Rain rushed toward it like a child toward candy. After opening the barrel and checking the contents, he was sure the city of Ashling could be saved. Meanwhile, in the military camp of the Orvis Empire, Ravenlock apologized to Lord Castile for failing the rebellion. The Lord answered that he expected such results from wastes like them. Still, how could they lose the siege in only 3 days? Eldrick claimed that Rain used forbidden magic to destroy the wall. Otherwise, they could have held out for weeks. Lord Castile wondered if Aldarion had sent a forbidden spell mage to protect his youngest son. Ravenlock replied that there was no need to worry. Such spells couldn't be used often, and the walls were already damaged, so they could attack easily. The Duke said he didn't need the opinion of a failure, and told Ravenlock to return to the Orvis Empire and wait for good news. Ravenlock argued that the whole plan had been theirs together, and that he still wanted to be involved. Lord Castile declared that Ravenlock had been kicked out for his failures. Then the Duke threw him a letter, which Ravenlock picked up and read. In it, he was accused of starting a new war, while the Orvis Empire claimed to be a victim of his schemes. This enraged the traitor, who started screaming and hurling insults at the Duke. Lord Castile ordered the soldiers to imprison Ravenlock until the war was over, and they followed. He was taken away, screaming that it was unjust. Eldrick, now terrified, wondered what would happen to him. Then Lord Castile asked, "What do you think I should do with you?" The former city lord begged for his life and offered to tell the Duke a secret. Lord Castile was intrigued by the offer. The next day, at the Thillen city main hall, Priscilla Edgar, the lord of the Thillen territory and sister of Rain Edgar, was going over some documents when an attendant got her attention. A letter had arrived, sent by Rain and written by Leah. Priscilla was wondering how her little brother was doing and had been contemplating visiting him soon. Moments after she started reading the letter, she told the attendant to bring Velas Holker to her immediately. The attendant replied that she would do so right away. Sometime later, Velas Holker stood in front of the lord of the territory. He asked how he could be of assistance. She asked how he dared rebel and where he got the courage. He replied that this would never happen, not after all the help his family had received from her. She said the evidence was conclusive, and asked how he dared make excuses. She threw him the letter, which he picked up and read. It informed him of the current situation in Ashling City, including the rebellion attempt by Caesar Holker. Velas was surprised by what he read. Priscilla asked if he had anything to say about the situation. He said this had nothing to do with the Holker family. It was only Caesar who tried to rebel. Velas had even written a letter to Caesar asking him to take care of Master Rain. Priscilla thought his reaction seemed genuine, suggesting he might not be lying. Perhaps it really was Caesar's idea. Velas then asked for a chance to prove his family's loyalty to her. She asked what opportunity she should give him to do so. He proposed that his only daughter, Rosalind, lead the army being sent to support Rain against the Orvis Empire. She asked if he was sure about sending his only heir to war, especially now that she had just reached adulthood. Velas assured her that the Holker family was willing to sacrifice anything for their lord. After all, without her help, his family would have disappeared a long time ago. Priscilla secretly instructed the attendant to send someone to keep an eye on Rosalind. If she did anything suspicious, she would be killed immediately. A couple of days later, outside Ashling City, the army from the Orvis Empire, led by Grand Duke Castile, had arrived. Eldrick remarked that if they attacked from this position, the city would fall and become theirs. He also noted that Rain had seemingly used magic to urgently repair the city wall, and was currently constructing a moat. Lord Castile declared that Rain must be foolish to waste precious magical power on repairing the city wall. Eldrick inquired why the Duke was pleased about the wall being repaired. Castile explained that while a wall is useful if the terrain is easy to defend and hard to attack, in a plain like this, the army cannot be stopped from attacking. If the wizards had magical power, they could stop an army from attacking. But if the wizards had already used their magic on repairing the wall, the army could attack freely. Eldrick praised Lord Castile for his intelligence. One of the captains suggested that they didn't need to storm the fortress. They could go around it and capture Ashling City. Lord Castile asked if the captain considered him incapable of conquering a fortress. The commander apologized for the misunderstanding, stating he only wanted to reduce casualties. The Duke asserted that there would always be casualties in war, and that they could use this opportunity to train their new recruits. He then asked a mage to accompany him to the fortress so he could demand Rain's surrender. Inside the city, Rain was agonizing in his office over the quest he had received not long ago. He hadn't had time to find anyone, and his growth was stagnating. Leah reported that Lord Castile of the Orvis Empire had requested an audience with him. Rain arrived at the city wall, where a soldier greeted him. The Duke declared that he was magnanimous, and wanted to give Rain a chance. Rain asked if the clown in the sky was Grand Duke Castile, prompting laughter from everyone. Leah confirmed that the clown was indeed the Duke of the Orvis Empire. Lord Castile demanded to know how Rain dared to disrespect him, asserting that even Rain's father wouldn't have had such courage. Rain retorted, asking what on earth the Duke wanted to dare bother him at this time. The Duke stated that he was giving Rain a chance to surrender before he transformed the place into a river of blood. Rain replied that he was also magnanimous enough to offer the Duke a chance. If he didn't want to die there, he should lead his army back to his own territory immediately. The Duke declared that Rain truly didn't know what was good for him, boasting that he personally led an army of 100,000 soldiers to the gates of the city. If Rain didn't want to be trampled under this immense power, he should surrender immediately. Rain lost his patience and instructed Leah to teach the Duke a lesson. The maid, always prepared for battle, drew a knife and threw it with immense speed toward the enemy Duke. The enemy wizard reacted immediately to protect his master, creating a strong protective barrier. However, the knife broke through the barrier, and the Duke barely avoided death, escaping with only a cut. The wizard, concerned, asked Lord Castile if he was all right. The Duke was furious, having been humiliated, and couldn't let it slide. Rain declared that this was a warning. Next time, the maid would not miss. Grand Duke Castile left in shame, and Rain informed Selina to prepare for battle, as they would be attacked soon. Back at the Orvis Empire Army's offensive camp, one of the captains asked Lord Castile if something was wrong. The Duke claimed that Rain had ambushed him, then ordered the army to attack immediately because he wanted to torture the young brat that night. The captain responded that the soldiers were tired and recommended attacking the next day so they could rest. This enraged the Duke, who attacked the captain and cursed at him for talking back. He then screamed that the soldiers of the Orvis Empire should be able to run for 100 days non-stop, and then conquer 10 fortresses without issue. The captain replied that even if the soldiers weren't tired, they still needed time to build siege equipment. The other captains agreed, stating they needed more time to prepare for the siege. Lord Castile screamed at them, accusing them of not knowing how to wage war despite all their experience. He insisted that the most important aspect of war was speed. If they attacked now, the enemy would be taken by surprise. Despite the captain's hesitations due to the lack of a plan, the Duke insisted that all soldiers prepare immediately to attack the city. Moments later, at the temporary barracks of the Orvis Empire army, some soldiers were discussing their exhaustion, even regretting joining the army. One mentioned seeing something nice, prompting the others to urge him to share. He revealed that he saw some other soldiers slaughtering a sheep, meaning they would eat well that night. This news made everyone happy, as they had been running for 3 days and nights, surviving only on military rations. At that moment, a captain entered the camp and ordered everyone to prepare to attack the enemy. One of the soldiers protested, saying they were exhausted and hadn't even eaten. The captain shouted that they were soldiers and their duty was to follow orders. The soldiers had no choice but to comply. Sometime later, the army was ready to attack the fortress, rushing toward the wall. A captain asked Rain if they could start firing their bows at the enemy. Observing the enemy army's attempt to tackle the moat, Rain asked the captain if he had ever fought against the armies of the Orvis Empire. The captain replied that he had only been in one battle against them. Rain inquired if this was the normal constitution of the enemy soldiers, noting they looked tired and famished. The captain responded that these soldiers seemed to be recruits and lacked proper nourishment. Rain questioned why they wouldn't feed their soldiers before an attack. The captain suggested 2 possible reasons: either they didn't have enough food to feed the soldiers, or Grand Duke Castile was using them as cannon fodder to deplete the city's defense resources, like arrows. Rain couldn't believe someone would consider such a strategy, and asked if the Emperor of the Orvis Empire didn't care about his people being used that way. The captain answered that most lords didn't care about their subjects. Lord Rain and Duke Aldarian were exceptions. Rain decided it might be better to be ruthless against people like Castile, who mistreated their subjects. The captain stated they had enough arrows to handle the recruits and asked for Rain's order. Rain declared that they wouldn't shoot any arrows. He had a better idea. The enemy soldiers were having a hard time crossing the moat. By the time they reached the other side, they were too exhausted to fight. Rain ordered Selina to have her wizards cast cold wind magic, and she immediately agreed. The head wizard ascended above the battlefield and cast basic frost wind magic, summoning dense, dark clouds over the entire area. Seeing this, Lord Castile scoffed, declaring that Rain was truly an idiot. One of the captains asked why he thought so. The Duke explained that he had sent the recruits as bait to draw out the enemy's arrows, yet Rain's forces were wasting precious magical power instead. Once their wizards ran out of mana, Castile planned to send in his own wizards and cavalry to attack. The captains praised him for coming up with such a clever plan, confident that they would easily conquer the fortress. Lord Castile began fantasizing about capturing Rain and forcing him to submit. Meanwhile, the wizards remained high in the sky, continuously casting cold wind magic. One of the enemy soldiers looked up, confused, wondering what was going on. As more soldiers noticed the wizards, panic set in. Many began running away to avoid being hit by magic. Chaos broke out in the front lines of the Orvis Empire's army. The soldiers were too frightened to fight. The captains tried to rally them, shouting orders to attack, but the troops were too afraid of the magical assault. Some captains desperately attempted to reorganize the ranks, screaming for them to charge. Selena, watching the scene unfold, asked if such low-level wind magic could really repel enemy troops. She proposed using strong lightning magic instead. However, Rain refused, explaining that it wasn't necessary. He continued, saying that historically, cold and hunger have ended more wars than swords and spells. The soldiers of the Orvis Empire couldn't even stand upright. How were they supposed to scale the walls? Most of the enemy troops were unable to move, paralyzed by the cold. The captain shouted at them to stop lying around like trash and attack the city. But the soldiers responded that they were too cold, too hungry, and lacked the energy to even lift their weapons. One captain ordered a soldier to report the situation to the Duke, while the rest were commanded to continue the attack. A few minutes later, at the temporary barracks of the Orvis Empire's army, an attendant informed Grand Duke Castile that a soldier had arrived with news from the vanguard. Castile ordered the soldier to enter and report. Internally, the soldier grumbled, thinking there was no point in fighting in such cold and hunger while the captains enjoyed themselves. The soldier reported that the attack was failing. Rain had cast cold wind magic, and the troops were too weak from hunger and cold to continue. He recommended a withdrawal. Lord Castile flew into a rage, calling the soldiers a bunch of cowards unworthy of life. He shouted that they didn't deserve to be called soldiers of the great Orvis Empire. The soldier tried to explain. They weren't afraid of death. They were simply too hungry and tired to fight. But Castile ordered his execution on the spot. Furious, the Duke declared that if such worthless soldiers couldn't conquer a mere fortress, he would lead the attack himself. One of the captains tried to stop him, insisting that there was no need for him to risk his life. They were willing to give theirs for him. Castile responded that he didn't doubt their loyalty, but he wanted to demonstrate his brilliance in battle. Later, in front of the fortress walls, Lord Castile ordered his magicians to create an earth bridge over the moat so the cavalry could cross. The magicians followed his command, building multiple earthen bridges across the moat. The Duke then ordered the troops to charge and promised a bounty to whoever captured Rain. The Orvis Empire army surged forward once more, rushing toward the fortress walls. Inside the city, a captain informed Rain that the enemy army had launched another assault. Rain instructed Leah to have the stuff dumped into the moat and to block all passages on both sides. Leah immediately accepted the order. Some soldiers began pouring a dark substance into the water. At the same time, the enemy troops started crossing the moat using the earthen bridges, now filled with the dark liquid. Thank you for watching the 5th part of the series, Forging an Industrial Empire in a Magical World. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments which one of the two is your favorite waifu. Bye bye.